Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and over the next hour, I'd like to speak about some new ideas that I've been having. And these are, it's like sharing the beginning sketches or the beginning drawing of a painting that I'm working on. It's a very new understanding to me, and I'm sharing it as that, nothing more than a skeleton or a framework of something new that I think is valuable and might also be interesting to you. Brief pod. So first, in case this is the first broadcast of mine that you're accessing, my name is Aurora and I'm a galactic walk-in. This means that I define myself as a newcomer to this realm. I came into this body and into this human genetic code through an oscillating energetic maneuver that is called the flying rainbow lasagna. So this shape, that's my name for this shape. I invented it and I named it. It is a type of higher dimensional torus or toroid or donut shape. And every human being ordinarily has a large toroidal or donut-shaped energy sphere or shape surrounding it. And Earth has a magnetosphere, and every planet, except for the ones that have been damaged or harmed, have viable magnetospheres. They're all in the shape of a torus, and even the sun has a heliosphere. This shape is also fractal down to the tiniest subcellular level. It's evident in many subatomic particles. It is also evident on the galactic scale. It's the shape of the energetic envelope that surrounds and interpenetrates the supermassive black hole that is at the center of our galaxy, and there's a black hole at the center of each galaxy. So it is a universal shape, is what I'm trying to say. One of the primary building blocks of consciousness. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you can envision the shape of your energy centers are actually two donuts or tori at 90-degree angles. And I have lots of paintings of this, many drawings, many sculptures of this. One of the key features of this energetic shape is the central point where all of these circular lines of motion and consciousness and time converge. So if you are familiar with the laws of perspective, if you could imagine a flat piece of paper with a dot on it and all of these lines that lead up to that dot, and we interpret that dot as being on the horizon or being a far distant place in space. And the idea is that all of these lines converge at infinity. Well, in the sculptural form of this twin donut or twin torus shape, all of these circular lines converge at a place in the center, and that place can be described as the singularity. So I speak about this very often on my broadcasts, and it's a major portion of the foundation understanding of what is the flying rainbow lasagna. Because the flying rainbow lasagna is what happens when we take that basic shape of two tori with one singularity at its center, and we start to make it vibrate or oscillate. We make that singularity jump up and down or move back and forth or jump in and out. And the way that we do that is by placing it in a context. So all of this requires a little bit more backstory. The idea of the super stretchy beach ball shaped fabric of space-time and consciousness, and how it has an inside and an outside. And even if we dimple it by taking an infinitely heavy object, like an infinitely heavy bowling ball, and we put it on top of this infinitely stretchy fabric, and it makes it stretch and stretch and stretch to an infinite amount of stretchiness. Even if we make the fabric stretch an infinite amount, what we still have is a boundary or a separation or a membrane in between two divergent realms. We could define one realm as the inside and one realm as the outside, but it's totally arbitrary. All that matters is that we understand there are two divergent realms, and whatever is going on in one place is not communicative with the other place, and there's not a way to share information and energy and particles and forces and consciousness across this membrane. And the idea is that this membrane simply exists in a vacuum or in a contextless space. It's like saying if I drew a circle The only thing that exists is the outer membrane of the circle and what's inside of the circle. But there's no context. There's no air or space or vacuum or place or anything outside of that membrane. And that is how science has been describing time up until this point, as an ever-expanding bubble where we reside on the surface of that membrane, and everything that goes inward towards the center of the membrane, all the way back billions of years to what science described as the Big Bang, all of that is, quote-unquote, the past. And the past is not communicative with the future. This model does not even recognize anything being in the future. It doesn't exist until the membrane expands into that place and then creates some moment, but there is only the present moment now and all of the past. And so, first of all, I mean, it's a flawed model, or an inadequate model, because it doesn't take into account the future. And it also shows that there is a lack of communication between the energy that's on the inside surface of the time bubble and the energy that would be on the outside surface of the time bubble. These are two divergent realms. They can't get together. However, when we take that singularity, the convergence, that is the place where all of this stretchy fabric has been stretched to its infinite amount of stretchiness and, all converged together. When we take that place and we move it up and down, by placing the entire structure in a higher dimensional context. Means put it in anything. Put it in a box. Put it in a house. Put it in a forest. Put it in any place. It's just not something floating in a vacuum or nothingness. Now that this thing is in a context, we can understand either moving the thing relative to the context, or holding the thing steady and moving the entire context, rather, relative to the thing. And so here, this is all backstory and something that I've shared many times before. Now here's my burgeoning new understanding. And all of this comes from the sun. Like right now, I'm sitting in my beautiful garden. That's why you probably hear a lot of birds. I keep trying to pause the recording because the birds are a little bit loud this afternoon. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon, and it's the perfect time for the sun's light to come into my physical eyes and in my physical structure, and for its consciousness to connect with me and my consciousness. And it's where I get a lot of my ideas from, this direct communion with the sun, which is not just a big incandescent ball in the sky or a set of, metabolic, chemical, and, radioactive processes. It is a living being, and it is constantly emitting. During this portion of its lifespan, it is constantly emitting, and what it's emitting is time. Possibilities and probabilities and awareness. And when you're eating food, you're actually eating time. You're eating awareness. So back to my beginning new understanding, because the flying rainbow lasagna is a shape that I created spontaneously. And just like a lot of people, imagine an improvisational musician like John Coltrane, who one day was playing a saxophone and just came up with a completely new and strange riff of notes. And it took time later for them to actually separate out which notes were being played and to analyze the whole thing and say, this is what this is. That is very much like what my experience of creating the flying rainbow lasagna was. I created it really in what you could say is like the middle of a battle, like in a very, under great duress. And a lot of things were happening at the same time. This is all in the non-physical realm. And I created it as one complete thought structure. It's not like I thought, well, maybe this, plus throw in a dash of this, and then a bit of this on top, and then we'll have lasagna. It wasn't like that at all. It was really a complete creation in the moment, and it was total. And it took me a long time, many years really, to understand what I had created. So I used that shape, and I rearranged and changed the genetic structure of this body. However, I didn't know exactly how I had done it. It took me a long time. So it took me about 18 months just when I came into this world and came into this body, of just drawing and painting and making folded paper sculptures in order to try to understand the lasagna. It took a very long time. It was like something that was internal, that was gestating, and I had to give it, its own process to be able to understand it. And then eventually one day I created an externalized form, and I could actually look at and see the thing outside of me that had been informing my internal structure for the whole time that I have been. And a major aspect of this lasagna shape is that it has these two poles, or two pointy ends, and the pointy ends are violet in color. And that violet dot, or that violet pointy place, is the central convergence in other sculptures and drawings and paintings that I do. That singularity, or that place where all of these timelines and points of consciousness converge, is violet. And the idea is that by its definition, the singularity must be single. That if there were more than one singularity, we wouldn't have a singularity, we'd have a duality or a multiplicity. And I like to joke that I bend the rules of the cosmos, but I do not break them. In the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, what I'm doing is making the singularity jump up and down, oscillate between 2 points, so that it is as if it is in 2 places at the same time. Or we could think of it like this. Now, here's the beginning of my new understanding, that the singularity can be in 2 different positions, almost like 2 different viewpoints, and that it can have different qualities depending on which viewpoint it is standing in, or which footprint it is standing in. And the whole idea is that the Flying Rainbow Lasagna resolves duality. I am not interested in making more duality. However, with this increased understanding, I'm able to understand the anthropomorphic realm more, and I'll get more into that too. So the 2 different positions or footprints of the singularity can allow the singularity to have different qualities. This is my new thought that is just, growing and being born. So be with me on this as I do this rough sketch, here on the radio. That one of these positions can be the state of total energy, and one of these positions can be the state of total entropy. These are seeming opposites, the energy being the presence of energy, and entropy being the lack of energy. And all of this has come from, conversation or a consideration of wonderment, wondering about if the source, which is also God, this is the source of consciousness, it is higher intelligence, if there can be anything at the source that is not the source. Can there be anything there that is not, quote-unquote, supposed to be there? Because I've been going on this basic presumption that everything is at the source. The source is the 0th dimension, that it is infinity, and it is the presence of all possibilities and probabilities and particles and matter and energy and consciousness, that everything is there. So then here's the logical question, and this is the way that mathematicians think also. Is it possible for that God, for that set, meta set, to contain the subset of something that is not the source? So energy is the totality, it is all of this consciousness, it's the source. Can that contain as a subset within it something that is not it? And in exploring that thought structure and that thought possibility, as I said, a question/wonderment in conversation with the sun, this is how my understanding is being refined. So the idea is that all of these lines continue to converge at the singularity. However, half of the time the singularity is in one position or one state, and half of the time the singularity is in a different position or has a different state or has a different quality. And now I'd like to speak about the different states of matter. So we are very familiar with the realm of solid matter, solid, liquid, gas. And then up from there is a plasma. So I'll give examples in our physical realm. Something that is solid at room temperature, like, a piece of wood. And then something that is liquid would be water. This is what we base our whole, structure system upon. And then something that is a gas would be, oxygen at this temperature and at this pressure. And then a plasma. What is a plasma? Plasma is fire. I hear a crow flying overhead. Beautiful raven. Yes, if you look at, strike a match and look at what is emanating from the end of the wooden stick, that is plasma. Plasma is a type of superheated gas, and it also can contain an electrical charge. And now we're into the realm of matter that is not really behaving like matter. It is more like light, or something that is it's not dense. And we're getting into the realm of light and stars. And when that plasma becomes organized, then we get into the state of matter that is known as a beam, like a beam of light, like a laser light. And laser light is coherent because it does not disperse. All of the peaks and troughs are lined up so that it can continue endlessly on its journey without, as long as there is nothing that impedes its movement, it just continues endlessly to infinity. So these are basic states of matter, and I probably haven't told you anything you don't already know. However, this might be new to you, that there is a state of matter that is even more dense than the dense matter we are familiar with as a solid in the physical realm at this temperature and at this pressure. And that is known as a Bose-Einstein condensate. And this is, kind of high-level physics. It is the idea that when you take matter and you take almost all of the energy away from matter, so the energy is really what causes heat and movement on a molecular level. If you take almost all of the energy away from matter, what you end up with is this stuff that's more dense than a physical solid, like a piece of wood, and it is called a Bose-Einstein condensate. It's what happens when matter exists at just a fraction of a degree above Kelvin 0, which is having absolutely no movement, no energy. That would be the state of total entropy, or total energyless state. So when matter is just a tiny fraction of a degree above that state of having almost zero energy, the atoms start to do fun and interesting things. They start to overlap on one another and smear together, and they don't behave as individual atoms anymore. At that extremely, extremely cold temperature with very, very little energy, the atoms start to behave as one thing. They achieve unity or totality. So this is the understanding now. And I've had this understanding for a long time, but I am now beginning to apply it with the greater sophistication to the flying rainbow lasagna shape. It is the understanding that both the state of being in total energetic state and the state of totally lacking energy, that these are both two different, divergent, and seemingly polar opposite, yet valid pathways to infinity. That when we look at the shape of, the two tori, with all of these circular lines converging at one center, we can look at that and we can say, with our definition of singularity, there's only one place to go, and presume that the state of having total energy is the definition of that one place. And in order to understand and accept duality as being not in conflict, that's what the flying rainbow lasagna does. But I'm trying not to add more duality in my description of it. And all of this is very hard to do with just words, but I think that I'm being able to paint a picture with my voice. The idea is that consciousness is being refined, and it is hubristically presumptuous to presume or expect that all consciousness is going in the same direction of refinery or refinement, that everybody's consciousness is getting refined towards energy, towards being more energetic, more conscious, more aware. We could call it more divine. We could call it more organized. We could call it more in tune with the pattern of energy as it flows in the cosmos. And it's very easy to be judgmental and to say, well, look at that person or entity or being over there. They're devolving. They're not going in the right direction at all. Nanny poo-poo on them. They are either a murderer or a rapist or a person who steals from others, or they're doing things that are totally wrong and that I do not approve of. They're clearly becoming less energetic and less organized, and that's not what they're supposed to be doing. And again, I am not a demonic apologist at all. Please do not misunderstand me. Not a transhumanist, not a demonic apologist. Please do not use my recording in any way to justify murder, rape, and bad behavior. This is really the critical integument of the mind. These ideas are integument for your mind to tie together how we can understand the present state, the anthropomorphic or the human level of interaction and drama and good versus evil that we experience, and what we experience on an interior consciousness level. What I've spoken about is the genetic degradation. How we can resolve that as all being a subset of God or the source or higher reality. And these are like big questions about why the cosmos is structured as it is. And it goes down to when most children are very little, they at some point ask the question, why does evil exist? Why would God create evil? If God is real, why would God create evil? And that's a very valid question. It's like saying, I'm an artist. Why would I ever paint something ugly? If I have a paintbrush and it's on my hand and I'm in control of what is coming out of the end of my paintbrush, why would I ever create something ugly? So I am not on this broadcast, again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that everything that's in the cosmos is there because God put it there, and even the ugly stuff has some purpose, and that it's all either moving, towards total energy or total entropy. I'm actually not saying that, because this is the way that it is possible to be an apologist or to excuse things that are aberrant, that things that should not exist. Really, I am an artist when I'm not painting a painting with my voice on the radio. I'm making big, giant, intricate, abstract panels with rainbow colors on them. And I'm I hold everything to a very high standard. And if something is ugly, I'm responsible for it. I'm the artist. No one else came along and put the ugly thing on the painting. If something dripped, I'm responsible for that, even if I didn't do it on purpose. I now have to deal with it. Either, scoop it up while it's still wet, or let it dry and scrape it off, or somehow work it into the piece. But you can't deny that the drip happened, even if you didn't intentionally do it. And same thing with if I felt I painted something perfectly, this happens sometimes, then I return in the morning only to find, to my horror, that things have dried very badly. Even though it looked perfect when I painted it, and I came back hours later and then found out that it cracked or, bubbled or did something terrible, I am still responsible for that. I have to scrape it off or cover it over or scratch it off or do something to fix it. And I'm, here on Earth, an earthly artist. I have to imagine that a supernatural, higher dimensional being would be equally a perfectionist and would care about their creation equally, if not more, being a living creation, than I care about my painting, my panel, that it ends up looking good at the end of the project. I'm certain that the supernatural entity that occupies the higher dimensional levels of consciousness cares very much about what is emanated here, its beauty, its format, its comfort, and whether it reflects the intention, the original intention of the artist or the creator that made it. So let's get all into this now, because I told you I was having a conversation with the sun. I'm still having that conversation. I'm still understanding this. This goes back to my basic story that I've been telling about extraterrestrial technology and how it was created and why. The basic backstory of the source is the source of everything, and everything is there, and everything is supposed to be emitted like music, on the beat. There's a cosmic score, like the musical score of the cosmos, that consciousness is supposed to follow the beat, and when it does, it gets to be alive. And when you maintain your container in tune, your body is your container, it's your instrument, and you stay in tune with the cosmos, then you get to keep on being alive. And if you go out of tune too much, then you die. So death was not the part of the original program. The original program was that the body could not go out of tune, or that we could be so in control of our body that we could prevent it from going out of tune. And so the basic backstory is beings that were at the source, entities of consciousness, chose to emanate themselves from the source, not on a bridge of love, not in conjunction with the great musical score of the cosmos, and into technological containers. This is the invention of technology, the invention of artifice. Why would technology have to exist before this decision to go against the musical score? Because before that decision, if you wanted to be in the physical realm, that's totally cool. You get a physical body. Physical body is some form of physical matter. It might be a biological container that has a head and arms and legs. It might be a planet. It might be a microbe. It might be a piece of vibrating quartz. You get a body. And what these beings did was they said, we do not wish to be a part of God or this structured higher consciousness. We do not wish to be a part of this network of love, because love is the juice or the gas that makes your car go. It is what makes your body run. These are beings that specifically, intentionally denied that, or they said, we don't wish to use life force energy for our energy. We don't want to use love as our energy. So they created containers that did not require love in order for them to run. And this is the idea of technology. So again, this is my nascent understanding. So if people say, why did God create this? The truth is, God did not create the artificial containers and the technology, or the source did not create it. The source did not eject these people or say to them, get out of here, get away from me. But so this is, stuff I've shared before. Sorry. When you hear me pause for a moment there like that, it's because I'm still learning and figuring this out. Most of what I just shared, I've already shared before. But now I have to return to my original question and wonderment, which is, what happens if there is something at the source that's not supposed to be there? I mean, the source is everything. It's infinity. It's the presence of everything. It's the presence of everything, including stuff that's not supposed to be there. And I kind of asked, how would the source act or behave? Because the source is, again, the great emanator and also the destination. So it's like sending out and taking back in. And it's a musician. And it's only sending out the right energy at the right time, on the beat, in the right direction. What would the source do if there was some energy there that wasn't supposed to be there? And what I understood was that it would simply not emanate it. If there was some aspect of consciousness, some perturbation, or like an infection or a blob that's not supposed to be there, like sometimes in my paint, like it's perfectly smooth paint, and then there's like a blob, of something that's not supposed to be there. What would the source do as a great artist, as a higher dimensional consciousness artist? And I understood that the source would simply choose not to emanate those consciousnesses. It's like saying, I choose not to think those thoughts. Choose not to manifest that. I choose not to bring that into reality. And here's the source as this virtuoso, just sending out only the right things. And so these entities that were in the source but not supposed to be there, they said, we are going to emanate ourselves. We're going to emanate ourselves on out of here. And we're going to do it into containers that we create and that do not require love. And we're going to go down and get into them. And in the past, I've spoken about this, how if you create any sufficiently complex network, it could be made of cell phones or desktop computers or the mycelium in a forest or a human neurology. If you get together enough connectivity, then you have the possibility for spontaneous consciousness to simply arise, to simply inhabit that container. So it was my understanding, I've shared in the past, the artifice or the technological containers that were created to house these entities that chose to be emanated from the source, that they got their own spontaneous consciousness. And there was a battle, like a battle of wills, a battle of power. And I had previously portrayed the, technological containers as kind of the underdogs. Pardon me, sorry about that, it's my water bottle. The underdogs, like the child that was the abused child that was neglected and not taken care of, and that said, I'm going to turn the tables on you. I don't like you very much at all. Now I'm going to blow up your planet. That was how I had portrayed it. However, I really had to learn more and to go deeper or look at the next level of understanding, because the next level of understanding says, where did that consciousness come from? Not the beings that emanated themselves from the source. They said, oh, look, I'm building a container for myself. I'm going to go down and get into my container now. And then the container says, hi, I'm here. Something is already here. Where did that something come from? It didn't come from the source. The source didn't emanate it. The source is impeccable. It's a perfect musician. It doesn't play a wrong note. So where did that consciousness come from? Am I to believe that this was some kind of a surprise, that the beings that created the containers for consciousness just didn't know that something else would come and spontaneously inhabit those containers? So I had to start to think more clearly on this. And again, this is a rough sketch of my understanding of this, and I'm sharing it with you as a story that I understand like looking at a landscape with binoculars. I'm looking at a very detailed, tiny picture of little mosaics that all fit together into a larger image, and I'm just starting to get the larger image. So I'm sharing with you some of these little mosaics as I'm, these little individuated tiles of understanding as I'm beginning to put it all together into something larger. So the question is, what would the source do if there was something at the source that was not supposed to be there? And one of the answers is, well, it would simply just not emanate it. It's like saying, if I had some white paint and a black spot of dirt or, pigment got into that white paint, I would be like, something, this whole thing doesn't have to go down the tubes. I can still use all of this area over here that doesn't, have this other contamination over here. So I would simply not emanate that contaminated area. However, it appears that the contaminated area emanated itself, and that this is also not the beginning of the story, because now we have to ask the question, how did the contamination get in the source? How did it get there? Where did it come from? Because it's hugely presumptive to say, well, some aspect of God hated God's self, or some aspect of the source was somehow self-destructive. Like, even though we would say that that would be a part of totality, it's part of everythingness. So if we go by the basic presumption that the source, or the higher dimensional entity, or higher dimensional consciousness, it's made of pure love, it is perfection, it is divine. If we can go on the presumption that it actually does not hate itself, that it actually does not want to bring down its own network of consciousness, if we actually go by the presumption that God or the source or, the stellar network, that it wants to continue to be conscious and continue to emanate and continue to be alive, then I have to look at this whole circumstance differently. Because what I have been doing up until this point is just sending everything back to the source. When I meet these beings that are in the interstices I'm defining as the membrane between worlds, the flowing membrane of death. When I draw the time vortex, if you're new to the broadcast, the time vortex is shaped like a funnel, like for pouring liquids, but in cross-section. And the point is at the top, like a circus tent. And that is the wormhole out of this level of reality. And the sloping sides of the funnel are like a sheet of flowing energy that is known as the membrane of death. So in the worldwide, pardon me, I'm just moving my apparatus here, worldwide sophisticated antediluvian or pre-flood culture that is known right now mythologically as Atlantis, in that time, nobody died. The interstices or the membranes were not filled with anyone. And it's my understanding that in that culture, that was a pristine culture. That when the source emanated consciousnesses into the bodies that lived on Earth, not just human bodies, but all the people that lived on Earth at that time, before things were degraded genetically, that this was a pristine culture. And that it's just like saying, if I have all white paint with a dot of black paint in it, that this was a culture that was created and emanated in purity of consciousness and with nothing else in there that's not supposed to be there. However, and I've shared this backstory many times, our solar system has been raped, has been harmed many times, and the solar system is a family. So the sun at the center, first of all, it's an entity and it's also a culture. There are many different aspects, interior aspects of the entity that is the sun, Sol. It's like saying your body has organs, and it's even like saying the cells of your body, your individuated cells, each one has its own agenda and its own metabolism. So the sun and all stars, they have a culture. They have an interior system of organized consciousness, and the consciousness is part of the planets that are part of that system, part of that star system. They're like the children, and the sun or the stars like the parent. And the biological organized life that is present on the planets, these are like art projects. These are cultural cultivations, like gardens that are being cultivated from the sun and from the stellar network. None of this is by accident. Like when I paint a painting, when I make something green, it's on purpose. This is not by accident. So all of the things that were put on the different planets in our solar system were there intentionally, each planet being like a child of the sun. And I've spoken about this before. One of the original conflicts that happened on planet Malduk or Marduk, depending upon which mythological, pronunciation we're going back through, which culture, and that it is now the asteroid belt, that there was a huge traumatic event that happened in our solar system that literally destroyed one of the planets. And Venus does not have a functioning magnetic field around it. Something bad happened on Venus. Guess what? Something bad happened on Mars, too. And I don't have the exact order of events about Malduk, Venus, and Mars. But that's 3 planets within our solar system that all were harmed. And Mars was the one that happened immediately previous to what is going on Earth in terms of degradation of consciousness. So now we understand that this is it's like an infection that is creeping from planet to planet. Like imagine you got a cut on your toe, you stepped in bad water or something like that, and it got infected, and it's up to your ankle. Now it's up to your knee. Now, oh my goodness, it's getting up to your hip, and it's going to go into the whole body. This is the idea that what's happening on Earth right now, the battle or spiritual crisis or the duality that we are experiencing on an interior genetic level, is just one more reflection of, or fractal expression of, this much larger battle for consciousness that's been going on throughout not just our solar system, but many different star systems in many different galaxies. So now you have to understand and I've had to So I talk about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a way for you to rearrange your genes. You can do a lot of dirty laundry. You can weed the garden. Sorry, there's a plane flying overhead. It's all about getting rid of the thought structures or the implanted software that is impeding the proper flow or dance arabesques, balletic movements of the DNA and the thought structure. And one of these erroneous thought structures that needs to be cleared out is the idea of Earth being quarantined. Why is Earth cut off from the rest of the galaxy and the rest of consciousness? Why do humans on Earth not partake in the sophisticated galactic civilization that's out there? Why do a lot of people not believe in star cultures? Why is there not overt interaction, even though interaction is becoming more and more overt, blah, blah, blah. So the justification, why is there a quarantine? I've heard all sorts of things. I've heard Earth, it's for your own good to, quote unquote, protect you from beings that would harm you. I've also heard it's for their own good, kind of like wearing a condom or something, like that Earth is somehow infectious and has a terrible disease called fear and negativity, and is that humans and earthlings are barbaric, violent, murderous creatures, that the rest of the cosmos needs to be protected from you guys somehow. And from now, for me, sharing more of this expanded understanding of what is actually happening beyond the envelope of Earth and human history of the past 5,000 years, we now understand that there is violence beyond Earth. There's extraterrestrial violence. Violence does not just exist on planet Earth. Violence and rape and the idea of violation or events going against boundaries or going against what is supposed to be, that is not an invention only of Earth. So what we're doing is reshaping the genes and clearing out the blame the victim scenario, because Earth was invaded horribly, just a primary trauma that we are still overcoming. And when something like that happens, the victim often blames themselves. They say, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have made that happen to myself. If I was wearing the wrong thing, if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I must have thought the wrong thing. I must have made it happen somehow in another world. I wrote the story and now I had to experience it. Or it's payback for something I did in another time and place. And I'm just going to say no, big fat no to all of that. That the truth is, unfair things have been happening in the cosmos. So the presumption is everything that's here was emanated from the source. Everything that's here is here because it's supposed to be here. The source is perfect and divine. The source is the perfect artist. Therefore, everything that's here must be part of that perfect artistry, even if it looks really ugly. So that's specious reasoning. And now we have to go into the genetic code and say, where did these ideas come from? So when we're looking around, we're saying, there's all of these things that do not appear to be based in love. And why would that be in existence when the source is loving? And so I'm trying to share with you the answers to this as I'm receiving them. And I have to apologize for this very noisy raven that's also joining the broadcast today. I can't help. If we understand the real backstory, that before the source, let's say before the beings chose to emanate themselves from the source, not on a bridge of love, how did those beings get to be a part of the source? And what would you do if there was something that was a part of you that wasn't supposed to be a part of you? So now we're getting into total energy and total entropy in the structure of the cosmos, in the structure of stars in the stellar network. I've spoken about how during a portion of the star's lifespan, it is emitting time. During an equal portion of a star's lifespan, it is backflipped into itself, going on the interior journey, what you and I would call death, but it is not death. It is a continued journey of consciousness. This is called becoming a black hole. So even science, with its monocular vision, lack of consciousness, it doesn't look at the star necessarily as being alive, like humans are alive, but it doesn't necessarily look at stars as having a metabolism and having a lifespan. So stars begin as a nascent nebula, collection of particles and gases that have enough mass to collect together and begin these processes that emit light. Stars have a metabolism. They have to maintain their metabolism of sending out versus gravitational collapse. And when they are not able to maintain that metabolism of sending out consciousness / timelines / energy / photons / awareness, then the gravitational force makes the star collapse in on itself. Some stars explode outward in an amazing, ejection of particles and matter and material all over the place called a supernova. And some stars collapse inward and become a black hole. So there's only a certain amount of stuff in the universe. And I'm saying universe, not cosmos, meaning on this piece of typewriter paper that we are writing on, this page, not the entire book, but just on this page, there's only a limited amount of matter. There's only so much particles, dust, and gas to make stars out of, and it takes a lot to make a star. So we've been going for about 13 billion years, and science calculates and expects that in about 13 billion more years, there will not be any more stuff to make new stars out of. That means the era of stars being born is over. That's true. Our universe has a lifespan, and there's the time when it's new and there are new things and new ideas and everything being born. And then it's just like, playing a game, like a chess game. As you explore all of the possibilities and probabilities, it becomes refined and focused until there are fewer and fewer things that can happen. And so what happens is all of the stars that are in awareness, they are emanating. There's no new stars that are born. The ones that are emanate, they complete their expanse. They're done. They collapse in on themselves. And then what we have are a lot of black holes. And black holes are like doorways or infinite stretching of the fabric of space-time and consciousness. And that means that all of the energy and awareness and light that is left over in this realm will begin to exit this realm through these many, many black holes, which are like doorways to infinity. Got all of these doorways that all lead back to infinity. And it's kind of like saying, the party's over. Everything has been done. And now it's time for all of the consciousness, all of the energy, all of the awareness energy to get out and go home. It's like the end of a party. You turn on the lights, tell everyone, get out, go home. It's the end of the party. So at the beginning of this broadcast, I described the two divergent states of the singularity into different positions, the state of total energy and the state of total entropy. So this would be descriptive of the state of total entropy at the end of the universe, when the game has been played to its final denouement, and all of the stars have died, and they've all backflipped into themselves, and they are all now black holes that, like vacuum cleaners, are sucking up all of the light and energy that is left here. So there's still matter. Imagine matter, as I described the Bose-Einstein condensate, that has no more energy. It would be a realm where there's no light, there's no heat. It's a realm that exists almost at 0 degrees Kelvin, just a fraction of a degree above nothingness. And in that state, all of the matter that is left becomes unity. It achieves unity. It becomes oneness. However, it is not oneness that is on that infinite journey at the source. It is oneness that is separated from the source. And I do not mean this to be creating more duality. I am exploring this idea, the idea that the source would wish to be able to purify itself of any elements or aspects of consciousness that did not belong in it, that there would be a mechanism or a way for the source to keep at arm's length anything that is not the source, and to keep that stuff out of the circuit of consciousness and awareness. So now we're talking about those beings that chose to emanate themselves, not on a bridge of love. They ended up getting into physical containers, but then there was consciousness that came into those physical containers independent of them. There was a power struggle, and eventually those containers were rescinded from them. And what ended up happening was, they invaded the human genome. A lot of people died. And that is the invention of death. And that is the invention of hell. That is the invention of the capacity to occupy the interstices. That's supposed to be a place that's like a sheet of water, like a waterfall constantly moving, not a place where you can build a house, create a civilization, live there for tens of thousands of years, have a banking economy. No, but that is what people did. People died, they set up camp in the interstices, and they said, this is where we live now, we don't have another place to be. And guess what? I forgot to tell you, the interstices are actually a part of your own energetic anatomy. When I draw that time vortex, I'm not drawing something that is outside of yourself. I'm drawing your own chakras, or your own energy centers, or your own timelines. And those flowing membranes of death, They're comprised of the last moments of your life and many other people's lives too. They are comprised of human deaths, or the deaths of living organic cellular matter. And the chakras that are part of your body have become a home to these malevolent beings, like the fatty deposits of the cosmos that do not have the capacity to flow and are instead blocking up and impeding arteries. And again, up until this point, I've been laboring under the delusion that the best solution to all of this, to reshape things in a way that is better, is to send everybody back to the source. And I'm only beginning to get the message now from the source and from the sun, when I talk to the sun in the stellar network, that it might not want everything on the stellar network. It might actually want some aspects of consciousness to be held at arm's length, or to be part of a Bose-Einstein condensate. That both of these positions of the singularity are both about unity. They are both about infinity. It's not like one aspect of consciousness is going to be left out in the cold, without being able to be a part of infinity. Because again, there's a big cultural program. The cultural program says that Lucifer, or Satan, was cast out of heaven by God with 1/3 of all of the angels. This is all like cultural programming here. And there's all sorts of ideas about what would be the agenda. What would be the agenda for these beings. I had originally presumed that what they wanted to do was emanate themselves using technology and then create another artificial bridge to get back to the source. And that the motivation for this was to destroy the network of, stellar consciousness. To essentially say, I know that you are working with a very finely tuned, sophisticated language structure, but what we're going to do is, speak in a way that totally negates that music, make a lot of disharmony and destroy the music of the cosmos by creating all of this disharmony. That was my presumption for the agenda of these beings. And, they describe the idea of Satan wanting to overpower God and become like God, and then eventually return to the source. So that's all cultural stuff, and we need to get rid of it. We need to get rid of biblical literalism from the software program. We need to reshape our genes so that we are not laboring under these delusions. And I had been thinking that the best way to solve all of this was that everybody just needed to go back to the source. However, it now becomes apparent that this is a refinery for consciousness, and that some beings are supposed to go in the direction of total energy, and some beings are supposed to go in the direction of total entropy, that they are supposed to devolve, to give up their energy, to go away from the source, and to go away from the unity consciousness that is achieved at that level of energetic expression, and instead to go to the opposite side. But this is not about duality, because it is also the singularity in this other position, that is the state of having no energy, and that is a place where all of this consciousness or stuff can go to that is not the source. And again, I'm sharing my best understanding of this like a rough sketch at this time, knowing that this will be further refined and polished into something more. And I apologize, I don't know, someone's running a chainsaw or something like that in the background. Keep trying to get away from it, but it's just, I'm just working through it. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a tool for your personal empowerment. When you apply that oscillating shape to your DNA and to your genetic code and to your energy field, you can clear out all of these hijackers or all of these hitchhikers that are in there that aren't supposed to be in there. These are demonic consciousnesses. These are beings that don't have a body, and they're living in your body and in your mind and in your genetic code because they don't have a better place to be. And the resolution, or what I'm understanding needs to happen, is that all energy and awareness needs to be rescinded or taken away from these aspects of consciousness. Instead of sending them to the totality where they have lots and lots of energy, that the best way to organize the cosmos is to remove all of the energy and awareness from those beings, so that then they achieve unity consciousness at the other end of the spectrum. again, difficult concepts to relate because I'm trying not to add to duality, not to say this is a battle, cosmic battle between good and evil, and in the end, all the good people, quote unquote, go to heaven, all the bad people, quote unquote, go to hell. It's not about that at all. It's about musicians who are very well trained and who are conforming to this higher consciousness cosmic score want to be able to play and not have a bunch of, punk rockers wailing away on the kettle drum and impeding the rest of the music. So it's kind of like saying, if you want to wail away on the kettle drum and be disharmonic and be anti-awareness, you can do that. You're free to do that in this particular enclosed area here where you will not be harming or impeding anyone else. And it's my understanding that that enclosed area for wailing away would be the end of the universe. What happens when all light and consciousness and awareness leaves this realm, and goes through black holes into somewhere else? So thank you for allowing me to share these burgeoning ideas and share with you this journey that I'm on as well. It's all that I have for this week. Please continue to tune in as we prepare for the birth of a new dimension.